Welcome to Studio 58A Live at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook and Instagram. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone joining us online wherever you are. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor, no? Share this video with a friend or 2 or 500 so we can have a very, very lively discussion. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. Now, legalize the herb. It's been in our music for decades, and we're finally getting there. Well, not quite. Ganja has been decriminalized, some would say, for specific purposes, medicinal, scientific, and therapeutic. But the situation is still a little tricky. However, as in many overseas jurisdictions that Jamaica has diplomatic relations with, marijuana is still considered an illegal drug. And in order to ensure we're still okay with those countries, we have to ensure this very young industry is well regulated. The agency responsible for overseeing the industry is the Cannabis Licensing Authority. And here today to give us a status update on the sector are our guests, Director of Research, Development and Communications, Felicia Bailey, and Director of Enforcement and Monitoring, Faith Graham. Welcome, ladies. Welcome.
Thank you, Vaughn.
Thank you.
All right. So we're just going... Just to lay the groundwork, we just want persons to understand what exactly the CLA does. I mean, I touched on it briefly, but give me a little more in-depth explanation of what the CLA, the Cannabis Licensing Authority, does.
So the Cannabis Licensing Authority, we were operationalized in 2016, and that was through the Dangerous Drugs Cannabis Licensing Interim Regulations. And this was really a follow-on from the amendments to the Dangerous Drugs Act in 2015. Now, what us being operationalized did was to allow for us to carry out our mandate, which is to create regulations to guide the development of a orderly, legal ganja and hemp industry for the use of the plant and its byproducts for medical, therapeutic and scientific purposes. And we are also mandated to ensure that regulations created and the activities within the industry are in keeping with our international obligations. Thirdly, we are to also issue licenses, permits, and authorizations for the handling of hemp and ganja.
All right, so big job. So like a very big job.
It's quite a bit of work.
Yeah, I can just imagine. No, I mean, having established what you guys do, at first, I want to, before we get into the issue and the regulations, and I'll tell the questions that people have and want to have answers to, give me a status update on the state of the industry now in terms of how does it look now based on how have you guys come along, and in terms of how many licenses have been granted, in terms of how vibrant is the industry based on where it is now and work that you guys have put in up to date. Don't all rush at once. Don't all rush to powder at once, but sure.
You want to know where we are now?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay, well, I have to say that we've come a far way. We started in 2016, essentially, as my colleague has just said. And back then, we had issued like about 11 licenses. To date, we're over 50. In fact, we recently issued the 50th license, and we'll be, just to commemorate the occasion, we'll be having a little ceremony just to say that, because we see it as a major accomplishment. So that we have come a far way in a very short time.
50 licenses.
Over 50.
And there are various types of licenses, I would imagine. Yeah. So it's not as simple as, you get a license, you can grow the weed now and sell it in whatever capacity, right?
No, there's a whole process, and we're regulators, so we would guide that process.
Really, there are 5 types of licenses that we offer. There is a cultivator, processing, retail, and research and development and transport. And within these different license types, there are also different tiers. So the 50 licenses are really distributed across the board. But I have to also add that outside of these 50 that we have issued so far, we have really brought 259 persons. We currently have 259 persons at the conditional approval stage. And this is really as far as the authority can bring an applicant. After this stage, it is really in the hands of the applicant to
do
get
the necessary things to make sure that you get the license correct.
So we really are pressing on, and I believe that we're doing tremendously well for an industry like this. 3 years is a very short time.
I mean, I just want you, I'm sure you appreciate it, but there's a lot there. The expectations of the public are very high for this industry, because many people see it as the way forward. Jamaica's bright, shining industry that will take us into the future and, accomplish so many various things. And I mean, so people are very passionate about it. I mean, already some questions online, people asking, why only the Melody Smith? Thank you, Melody, for your question. She's asking, why only the big men them alone are allowed to plant it? What happened to those who have been doing it all their lives, even branded as criminals? Right, we're going to get into the issue of facilitating small growers and so on as we go along. Stay tuned. But we just want to let's lay the groundwork first and let persons appreciate what exactly the CLA does before we go on into those more thorny issues. But I'm sure they're prepared to answer it. So feel free to send in all the questions we want. They are here. That's why we have them here, so you can ask them the questions that you have, so that you can get the answers that you need, because I'm sure many of you are interested in probably going into it yourselves, right? So, all right. So I want to get into the details about the specific licenses, because, I mean, there are many persons who might be interested but feel like, for example, I might be interested, but maybe it's only a license for grow or make medicine or grow, something like that. So they might not necessarily know that there are different ways in which that they can approach the situation. So what about some of the different licenses? What are the differences, really?
All right. We have a cultivator's license. And as Felicia said, they come in 3 tiers. So the cultivator, you have tiers one, which is less than an acre. And you have tier 2, that is an acre up. That's 2 acres or more. And then you have tier 3, above 5 acres. 2 to 5 acres, sorry, it was 2 and above 5 acres. So the larger the acreage, the more it would cost you in terms of the fee to get in. So persons who want to get into the space, they have the opportunity to choose. So they can choose to become a cultivator, and they can choose based on where they are to start as a tier 1. It doesn't preclude them from graduating to a 2 or 3 later on. Right? There's the retail license.
Well, before I stick up in terms of cultivator, what exactly does that allow you to do? Rather, I mean, it seems obvious, but just to be clear, is that you're just allowed to cultivate, and what else?
You're allowed to cultivate, right? So you can plant seeds, you can plant from clones, but that is essentially what you do. You cultivate and you sell.
Oh, you cultivate and you supply to, I would imagine, registered and legal entities.
Other legal. All right. It might be useful for me here to just explain how we operate overall. The authority uses what we call a closed loop model. That's our business model, and what it does is it enables us to monitor and track and trace ganja from seed to sale within the license regime that we regulate. So we know where all the ganja is going to go. Of course, the genesis of it would be cultivators, because that is where you get the material. And so what we have done, we have this model. It is effected through what we call a tripartite agreement, where there are 3 parties. There is that cultivator who starts it off. There is the CLA in the middle, because we have to be that middle person to see that the ganja is going where it ought to go. And then there's what we call the downstream buyer. The downstream buyer would be the person purchasing from you. And when you become a cultivator, in fact, before your license is granted, we need to know that you have those downstream buyers
already lined up,
because you need to know where your ganja is going.
Right.
So those downstream buyers can either be retailers, processors, or persons doing research and development. So that is the foundation of it.
All right. And so it's like a chain, so to speak. So it starts with the cultivators at one end, and then you have the different persons.
Yeah, 3 other license types who you can sell it to.
Right.
The retailers, the processors, as well as persons doing research and development.
Right.
So you're not just gonna get a license to cultivate and you're just stuck.
Right.
The inherent in the process is that you're already facilitated to sell something, because by virtue of your having to have that downstream buyer from the outset. So you know exactly where your business is going. So any cultivator now coming into the business would want to identify these persons, and as many as you can. So you can enter into tripartite agreements with them.
So it's basically the onus is on you as a cultivator to try and identify persons who are going to buy the product from you early, so you don't run into issues in terms of your habit and you can't sell it.
As with any business, you have to have a plan. So you have to know who your market is going to be. right? CLA is there to facilitate that process as a regulator.
All right, so who else do we get after the cultivators now? I mean, you just go into
Other
detail,
license type, you
the
mean?
other license types, so we can go into detail about what the different ones that persons can get.
All right, well, they can get a processor's license too. So as I said, the cultivators would sell dried buds and so on to the processors, and they will process, they'll extract oils and so on, and they'll make that. Right now we're trading amongst ourselves here, and imminent are export regulations to come.
Okay.
So we have another dimension to look forward to. So that's what the processors do. Now you have persons like the universities, well, entities I should say, who are engaging in research and development. And I know you might have heard the name Dr. Henry Lowe, right? Persons like that and entities like those, they are researching and developing, and you know, there is vast opportunity in doing that for Jamaica in terms of the products that can be developed. We can get patents from that and so on. So there's a lot to be desired having a research and development license,
right, so
educational possibilities and so on.
All right, so you have your cultivators, your processors, and then your research and development kind of persons who go in that direction. Any other kind of license we're missing out, or those are essentially the three categories?
We have 5 actually.
Okay, all right.
So there are retail licenses as well. And this is where now we call them the retail herb houses. You would have heard of some of them.
Yeah, right. Like
So,
Epican and I think some other places.
Epican and others like that, right. So they are able to sell ganja in different forms. They can sell the dried buds and they can sell the oils. Now, what is important for the public to know is that this is not a recreational situation. The authority, what we do, our license regime is based on a medical ganja. That's what we do overall. So any license type must be involved in the handling of ganja for medical, therapeutic, or scientific purposes. Now the retailers, we have retail houses where retail licenses that allow licensees to sell to persons who have a prescription or a recommendation from a licensed medical practitioner from this jurisdiction. Right? So you can't just go in and just, I need some ganja, and you just get it.
Right.
There are regulations that guide that process because it's a medicinal regime, and therefore it has to be recommended by a medical practitioner.
All right, so and I'll just keep going. Talk to me about it, because I just want to make sure that people understand exactly what the different license types and so on. So if they are interested, or if they, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, and that's because you have persons who just think, it's free, I can just go light up and do what I want to do, and don't understand that there are stipulations. As with every major responsibility, there are some other, there are things that come attached. You can't just light up the weed and think it's all right, it's cool, and everything good because it's free up now. So I just want to make sure persons understand that there's a whole infrastructure surrounding it, and they need to get educated on it so that they don't fall into problems and that kind of thing. You understand?
Right. So once you come on the regulated side, there shouldn't be any problem. If you come on the regulated side and you remain compliant with the terms and conditions of whatever license you have entered into, and also with the law.
I think the only license that Ms. Graham didn't touch on as yet is the transport license, which is what would facilitate the movement of the ganja from the cultivator to the downstream buyers, because it is not where you could just go and throw it in any old car and decide I'm going to move it. As we said, it's a closed loop system, so we have to at all times know where it is,
where it's coming from, who is transporting it to, etc.
Precisely, and the authority is a part of that process as well.
All right, there's one thing as I was doing some research. Well, let me go before that. There's the perception that the industry is moving slow. There are persons who feel like, we should have reached however far compared to, for example, parts of Canada, parts of the United States, where it has the regime is a little bit more advanced, if you will, and so there are persons that are able to walk into dispensaries and buy and that kind of thing and have the products and so on. So people might want to compare Jamaica to those jurisdictions and wonder, why aren't we moving as quickly? Do you think that's a fair assessment, and if not, why?
I don't think it's necessarily fair. The thing is, you can walk into a facility here, get your prescription or recommendation and purchase just like those jurisdictions. However, it's 3 years So we are moving along, but the industry can only move as fast as the people, the society is ready to move. So that those 259 persons at conditional approval, and if you come and apply and you reach conditional approval, it's up to you to be able to expand the industry.
And it's also important too to put everything in context. The context in those countries are a little bit different from ours. Some of them, they have legalized. Our government is not there. We are not doing legalized in the sense of recreational use. Our government is not for that. We are just a medicinal regime. And so to compare a country to say you can just readily go and access it to our legal regime is two different things. It's apples and oranges. So you really can't compare them like that. As it relates to whether or not we're behind, that question is on the lips of almost everyone, but I'm here to tell you that we're not. We're not behind.
Upon them and tell them, because them
we are not behind.
right.
No, we're not behind. As a matter of fact, I was in Uruguay the other day. We went just to meet with other regulators and so on, other persons in the region to see what is happening in their jurisdiction and so on. And to be honest with you, we are ahead of some persons in a lot of ways. The regulatory body in Uruguay at the time, they had only issued about 11 licenses. The regime is similar to ours in terms of how we operate. The fact that we issue licenses, they issue about 5 licenses themselves. We're on par with what is happening out there. In probably the larger jurisdictions, Canada, Australia, and so on, what we are doing is comparative as well. Okay. Right. In fact, Felicia mentioned when we just started that we have international obligations, right? And that is because we have ratified international conventions, drug conventions through the UN. And the one that really speaks to us is the single convention on narcotic drugs, because that is the one that prescribes the regime for that allows us to have a regime for medical ganja. And they have a body called it's a part of them that's called the International Narcotics Control Board. And in fact, we have to keep in mind all of the restrictions that they have, that having ratified the treaty and live and function in that kind of space. The INCB came to Jamaica, they came to the CLA, and they can do this because they, in the same way that the CLA regulates the medical industry here, the INCB regulates all the countries that have ratified these conventions. So just like how the CLA can pop up and do a spot check here and there, or we have to be integral in everything, so is the INCB. And they are pleased with our progress and the fact that in what we have been doing, we have upheld all our obligations under the treaty. So in that sense, we're doing very well comparatively with other jurisdictions. We're not behind at all, and I can say that categorically. Coming up, we're going to be having export regulations very soon. And
yeah, I'm sure people are interested here about that, because that's the next thing.
We would be like one of 10 countries who have that kind of regime. So it is still even though you might hear that Canada is large,
right,
and you might hear that they've been trading and they've been doing this and that. The thing is, the conventions limit us to trade with other countries that have ratified the conventions too. So we can't just trade to anybody, and we have to get this thing right. Because the thing is, if it is that we are not compliant, the same INCB, in the same way that the CLA can say to a licensee, you're not compliant, we're going to suspend your license. The INCB has that authority to say Jamaica is not compliant, so therefore Jamaica will not be allowed to do this or that. Right. You understand? So everything we're doing is within what we ought to be doing, and our progress is comparative to the other jurisdictions. Because some of them, even though they have had jurisdictions way before us, they're not further along in the game.
So we're making moving leaps and bounds, if you will, compared to those who might be just taking it out like baby steps at a time, kind of, if you will.
Yes. Right. I have to also say that all that the CLA does is really to ensure that the industry is a sustainable one. So in terms of making sure that we're in line with what the INCB recommends, is to ensure that we are sustainable. Ms. Graham spoke to Canada, and persons are saying we're behind and Canada is doing this and that. Actually, in September, Bruce Linton was at a conference here in Jamaica, and he's the co-founder of the largest company, cannabis company in Canada, and he applauded this Cannabis Licensing Authority as having implemented one of the top 2 regulatory frameworks for cannabis in the world.
Okay.
So, it's kind of interesting when we speak to persons from other jurisdictions and they're saying, wow, you are doing so well. But locally, I guess maybe because we don't necessarily have the understanding of what the legal cannabis industry looks like internationally, then...
And to add to what she's saying, one of the things is our culture. And we can't deny that.
That's true.
Right?
I mean, there's a love and appreciation. It's almost sacred.
Passionate about that.
Very
It's almost
passionate.
sacred,
We're passionate about it. In fact, at the Cannabis Licensing Authority, we call it the miracle plant because we know that it has all these properties. And that is why we're doing what we're doing, so that these properties can be channeled in the right way, right? We want persons not only to be well, but so therefore that we have to regulate how it is used to ensure it is safe so that they can be well. Right, but we also want them to give them the opportunities that come with cannabis, the opportunities to become a licensee, engage in business, get investments from other from other countries into your business. And one of the things that the CLA does in how it's built into the regulation is that for entry into the industry, when you submit your application, we have a process that we call the fit and proper, that you have to meet that requirement, and it's by law, right? And in that, in all of those stipulations is included the stipulation for substantial ownership and control by a person ordinarily resident in Jamaica.
I was going to get to that.
So initially I had mentioned, there are some people saying
people who believe that I was about to get to the question. People that some big foreigners are big money people are going to squeeze out the local, the small.
The playing field is level, and the law, what the law tries to do is to protect Jamaicans because of that substantial ownership and control clause that helps to qualify you to be fit and proper, right? So, for instance, you have a company, and majority ownership in that company must be by a person ordinarily resident in Jamaica. So, in that sense, we are protecting Jamaicans.
So I guess the question is the framework, as you mentioned, the cultivators, and you can start with 1 acre and so on. Is that really the consideration that is given to the small farmers, the persons who, probably have been growing it illegally for many years and want to come out of the shadows and start operating legally in the sector? That is that's the entry port for them to get into it, if that's what they're interested in, the cultivation.
That is one license type, right? No, I just want to make a distinction between the small farmers and the traditional farmers. We tend to use the terms interchangeably, but they're really not.
Yeah, okay.
All right. The traditional farmers are those who, remember we started speaking about culture, who culturally have been growing ganja and sending their families to school, but it has been illegal.
Yeah.
Right? And so what has happened for those persons, the CLA supports the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. That's our parent ministry, MICOF, with this program that they have initiated, the Alternative Development Program, which has now given the traditional farmers that window to come into the regulated space. Now, I mentioned going to Uruguay earlier this year. It was centered around the Alternative Development Program. And typically from the United Nations standpoint, how they would normally treat alternative development is to replace the crop. So you are a traditional farmer and you are growing cannabis illegally. What they would do is destroy that, give you and say, go and grow potatoes. Because of our culture, because of our passion for ganja and wanting to preserve that, we don't do that. Our approach has been to substitute the market. So rather than telling you, burn your ganja, grow potato, we are saying, all right, come over into the legal space, right? And come into the legal market. Because if it is that we don't do this, then the illegal market
might
will
drown
continue
out and
to
crowd
thrive.
out the other one,
And so therefore, our medicinal space would be compromised.
So how robust is that framework to try and approach some of these informal cultivators? You know what I mean? Instead, do you go out and ask, try to make contact with them and try to say, okay, try and get into the formal sector, or is it a hard job to convince them that the legal route is the way to go?
No, we find that persons are responsive. Persons want to get in. In fact, for the alternative development program, they would have written to the authority, seeking some kind of what to do next. I don't know if you have been seeing the work that we've been doing with a compound. For instance, the
right. We know that they recently got a license.
Right. So those persons, that is made up of a bunch of small farmers. So it's not just one person benefiting. It's the entire community of the farming fraternity within a compound, then, so to speak. And we're going to another area after that. Once persons can get organized and they are traditional farmers, they can also write to the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, and then
express their
start
interest.
over and tell them that, so the persons who might be interested or know anybody can say, all right, we know you agree and we want to get into the legal space. How do they begin that process?
All right, sorry. First of all, one of the things that would stop someone from coming into the legal space right away is probably financing, right? And so what we try to encourage persons, and the regulations that guide us puts that provision out there, because we have always from the beginning thought of the small farmers as well as the traditional farmers because of our culture. And so there's provision in the law for persons to come together and form friendly societies or cooperatives. So if you can't afford it on your own, you have that provision. Right? We have provision by the law as well, where we can waive your fees or we can defer your fees. Right? Now, you might have heard us mention the transitional farmers. This is for the small farmers, not the persons who have been cultivating illegally. This is for small farmers who want to get into.
Right, they want to start in addition to whatever else they're going.
Right. So if it is that these persons, now we mentioned the cultivators tier 1, you may have some small farmers who probably even can't get to the tier 1 stage. So what we are looking at now is we're looking into doing a transitional permit for the small farmer. So you're not able to afford all the things that a cultivator's license would require right away. So we help to give you a start.
Right.
So you come in and you do your applications and so on. As I mentioned, that there's provision for the fees and so on. So what that transitional permit will do, it will allow that farmer an 18-month period where they can come into this space, and they wouldn't have to do a full build out, right? Because persons would say, all right, so even if you waive the fees or defer the fees, you still have to build out. The thing with the transitional permit, how it helps is that they don't have to do a full build out of all the infrastructure that is required for the regular cultivators. So in that way, the cost to them would be reduced, and so they would have a better chance of coming in and starting, giving themselves some time to make some money so that they can transition into that, to a license now from that permit.
It's almost like you basically take out the license for a higher purchase. So you know what I mean? They kind of say, all right, we're going to work with you and give you time to make some money, then you can pay back for it. But the question I have now is, in terms of actual cultivation, do you get into the nitty-gritty of cultivation with them, or do you basically leave that to the farmers to plant as they want? Because depending on the circumstances, it may very well be that they might be using something that, because many persons have their own indigenous way or to create a particular strain, if you understand, and then they might have that, and so they have like a formula, if you will, and then you have would you want to come in and say, okay, maybe this formula is necessarily, I don't want to say legal, or just maybe it might not necessarily be the most ideal way, and so you might want to say, oh, maybe you should try this, or maybe this is not allowed, or that kind of thing.
Well, no, we don't regulate your strain, and we don't regulate the how to. What we want to ensure is that you're actually growing ganja and not hemp. And if you're growing hemp, there are certain specifications for that. So we don't limit a person the number of strains that they want to do or the kinds of strains. One is ganja.
So you don't really get into
feminized seeds, right? Now, what we need persons to understand, though, especially because a lot of persons look to come into this business so that they can export. And persons need to understand that you have to meet certain standards for the jurisdiction to which you want to export. And so because of that, they will be required to have a certain standard in how they grow. But the CLA does not go out there and dictate and say that. No, there are standards such as the good manufacturing practices, good agricultural practices, things like those. And in the same way that you would do if you're doing any business at all, you would educate yourself, right? The authority, although our primary mandate is regulation, part of it is compliance, as I mentioned. And so what we try to do is to educate persons. So we would show them how to be compliant in the ways that we can.
Right.
So we have workshops with them, sometimes with in-house, and we have brought it out into the community as well.
All right, so I would just showing some love to persons online. Ricardo Portius, who's always tuning in. Thank you, Ricardo, for your eyes. Really appreciate that. Thank you to Wayne. Didn't show your last name, but Wayne shared the stream. Appreciate that, Wayne. As many persons as we can get online to watch this very, very informative program. I hope that we can get as many persons up and going. Candice Christian wanted to ask from before. She was asking which are the other countries that make up the 10 that are in that are able to, I guess, have the framework or maybe export or have that framework that you had mentioned. Jamaica is one of 10 countries that is able to.
One of the 10.
Right, she wants to know which one, if you know what those
are.
Yeah, we don't want to go into that.
Well, so Candice, hopefully we can get that to you at a later time, all right? Okay, just you can find the CLA on their website, which is cla.org.jm. And if you want additional information, you just want to get your feet wet in terms of understanding what they do and the different licenses and so on and so forth. All right, so keep sending the questions, the comments. Thank you for your eyes all the same. Really appreciate that.
Now, they said that they want to know what we're doing and so on, and you know, we go out into the communities, so we will encourage persons to write to us. For instance, in a community, you have a number of persons within your community who want to know. Write to us.
Invite us
to
and
come
we'll
into
be
the
there.
community, and we'll come out.
Right,
we'll come to your community center, we'll set up, and we'll tell you all about what we do.
All right, so there you have it,
actually,
people.
earlier this month, we Enfield community in St. Mary did just that. They invited us. They had farmers groups, and they were interested in understanding how they could put themselves into the legal industry, and they wanted the youth to also understand what it is about, and we went out there and we shared with them.
All right, so there you have it, people. I mean, they are telling you to call them and make contact with them, and they are very accessible. So a lot of persons might just be out there wondering and feeling like, no, just a big man or this or that or the third. It's nothing like that. Make contact. They'll come and give you the information. I'm sure you just want to give them the information, all right? So as many people as can join the industry. Now, I wanted to ask, in terms of lucrative, you know, people might be seeing and thinking, because it's now everybody running in on the industry now, is this even worth doing anymore? You know, I mean, whereas once upon a time it was taboo, it was illegal, so the price was high, if you understand. And now people are wondering, is this a legitimate industry worth going into now that these steps are being taken to legalize and make it more formal? You know what I mean? What say you to that?
We probably can't just give you a dollar amount. And I think probably between April to October of this year, we would say that locally the trade amounted to about $825,000 US.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and you know, and we told you the number of licenses that we have issued, and not all of them are operational yet.
Right.
Because they have their license and they might not have started. In fact, we have about 30-something licenses that are actively trading, actively growing, actively processing, actively selling, actively researching. Right, transportation license. You have persons that this is the license type that it is least
applied for
up to date. You know, so we wouldn't be able to see what they are making yet. But as it relates to trade amongst those licenses that are producing, that is what we have tracked between that period, April to October of this year. Over 825.
But we have to also add that would not include what retailers would have made in retailing to the public.
Right, to the end user. Because remember, our closed loop system, we are tracking from seed to sale. So we know that when you cultivated, this was sold to this retailer, and we know what the amount of that trade was. But beyond that, we wouldn't know until we go in and do our compliance checks and all that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it as well. I'm sure you have to keep those books because you don't sell. I mean, which brings me to the other question. It's something that I don't know if it's something that applies to Jamaica, but the ability of persons who set up their businesses to, you know, because the complaint is that they can't do business with banks and stuff like that, and so they're unable to really take the necessary step because they have to use like an all cash operation, and that in itself has its own challenges and so on. I know that some steps are being taken in other jurisdictions. What kind of consideration is being given to those persons in Jamaica?
Well, yeah.
What I will say is this is not a problem unique to Jamaica. This is pretty much across the board.
Right.
Especially if you're looking at the United States. Within the states, they have the same issues where they're having to do all cash. Because on the U.S. federal level, there are issues. The banks can be held accountable.
Serious problems if they deal with hand.
But as you said, there are some changes where they're looking. There is the Safe Banking Act, which is moving along the line. It was passed at the level of the House, I believe, and it's has moved on to the Senate for them to inspect it to see if companies operating within the legal cannabis industry for medical purposes will be able to do some business with the banks.
Right.
But it is not unique to us. And the issue that the banks here have is that they have relationships with those banks in the United States. So to protect
correspondent banking,
to protect those corresponding banking relationships, they're cautious. They're cautious, and it is understandable. So it is an international issue,
an industry-wide challenge.
Yes,
it is, and we have to give respect where it's due, and they have been lobbying to change that, because once, and I think we've made a lot of and when I say we, I don't mean the CLA, because as regulators we can't really do anything.
Right.
But our Honorable Minister Adi Shaw has been lobbying for that, right? So he has been getting the ears of these people and trying to advocate for the change wherein the corresponding banking situation can be sorted, so that it will make the industry a little bit easier
to
trade.
grow if we can do digital
but it is important,
transactions.
as Felicia said, to understand that it is not a Jamaica situation. It is industry-wide.
So it's an issue that I guess it's going to take some time essentially before we have to see what other jurisdictions are doing, and then we compare notes, get the best practices, and see what works best for Jamaica as it works. Right. Now, in terms of hemp, you see there's a distinction between hemp and ganja, and they're treated separately. How is that? How does that work?
All right. Well, everybody knows ganja. In fact, persons thought that it was one and the same.
Right.
They're of the same family, right? There's the cannabis plant. No, the distinction is made because based on the concentration of THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and CBD. The THC is that part of the plant that gives what they call the psychoactive effects to persons who consume it. No, the distinction is this. Hemp we define it as anything that is 1% THC concentration or less, right? That is basically the distinction, right. Yes. And what ganja now is all parts of the plant, cannabis sativa, that is the scientific name, all parts of it, right? Where the resin is that sticky stuff inside, people call it the gum, right? Where when all parts of the plant where the resin has not been removed, and that is what we call the ganja.
Right. So is it that they're treated? Is that they're treated differently? You treat with cultivation and so on as far as health. You apply for different licenses for hemp relative to ganja, that kind of thing.
Right. No, hemp falls under our remit as well as ganja. What the government sought to do was to start to develop the ganja industry, because that is our primary thing. No, we also have to consider hemp because it is in law that we have to, and also because it exists. And so the approach that we take is one where we have to protect both industries. Now, there are different kinds of hemp, and so largely all hemp is typically referred to as industrial hemp. It's a blanket way of talking about it, but it can also be misleading, because there is industrial hemp, and just for the purpose of this discussion, I'm going to say craft hemp, which is for medicinal purposes, and that is what the authority regulates. At present, whilst we have regulations for ganja, we don't yet have regulations for hemp. We're just now getting into that part. However, we do have a policy position on it, which enables us to offer no objections to persons who meet certain criteria. Now, I mentioned that there's industrial hemp and that there is what we call craft hemp. Now, the industrial hemp can be very dangerous in terms of the possibility of cross-pollination with ganja. And so the authority does not support that. The ministry does not support industrial hemp. What we are leaning towards, because everything we do is medicinal, is craft hemp. And know how we make the distinction, it is the concentration again.
Of THC,
less than
right.
1% THC, but 10% or more CBD. Once the CBD content in a hemp plant, in a hemp strain, is less than 10%, we consider it industrial hemp. And so we don't support that, because that has too many danger factors in terms of cross-pollination.
Right.
So we stick to the medicinal one, which has less, there's less potential for danger and damage.
It seems like the people online are treating you guys very well today. I don't know. Normally they come with a whole
We
heap of
hope so.
questions. I can only imagine it's because they're interested in what you have to say and they're trying to get the information. They're not peppering you with questions like they normally do or they do previous guests. So I would enjoy it while it lasts. All right. Now, in terms of prescriptions, well, I have the questions in terms of prescriptions from doctors to our, I guess, the framework surrounding how a doctor, for example, may prescribe a product or drug or whatever the case may be that has marijuana in it or ganja in it. Do you treat with that as well, and how is that done?
That comes under the remit of the Ministry of Health.
Okay.
Right. We
So-
regulate the licensees.
Right.
Right? No, the licensees know. Part of the law tells them that if you're going to be operating a retail license, then this is one of the things that you must have. It can't be willy-nilly. A medical practitioner must make a recommendation.
Okay.
So, in the same way that we couldn't tell a doctor how to operate otherwise, we can just give you that framework of what is required to operate that retail license. We can't speak to the part about how the doctors go about and do the recommendations or the prescriptions or the...
No, do you have a similar operation, for example, for somebody who, let's say, has a product that they believe can, clear up skin, whatever the case may be, has a like a product that they've created, and ganja is they think ganja is a good component and that it has whatever effects. So like the cultivators who can have like a deferred kind of situation where they can grow and then pay back for it afterwards. Let's say a smaller person who, like a very small business, I would say micro, has decided maybe I want to try and develop some creams or some, whatever to help as a product that I want to sell, and marijuana would be a component of that. Can I come in and talk to you guys about creating some kind of thing that I could be a processor license or something like that, but do it in a deferred kind of way, if you understand what I mean?
Well, remember when Ms. Graham spoke earlier, broadly speaking, outside of transitional license or ADP program, we do have through the law the ability to persons can ask for deferment of their fees across the board for whichever types of licenses. So, but as it relates to the processor's license, that's kind of a you're making products, so that has to be passed by the Ministry of Health.
It depends, right? Because
I would imagine it's much more rigorous for processing.
Once it becomes more than just an extract of the plant, then it comes out of our jurisdiction now. When it comes out of our jurisdiction, so approvals will need to be had
at
from
higher
the
levels.
Ministry of Health, because therefore when anything is added to it, or it is to be added to something and it's going to change it in the natural forms, then that becomes a medical preparation, and we don't regulate that. That is for the Ministry of Health.
So then insofar as the processing, you just allow persons to process the substance to create the gum or whatever, the extracts.
That's in the facility.
Oil.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay, I guess, it just seems to me that, for example, a processor would want to have a processing license and then use, while they have that license, to continue, and then they're allowed to have that license, and then they would have to contend with the Ministry of Health when they go on to prepare their product or whatever. So it's not, so you kind of leave it on, you guys stop where our legal jurisdiction stops, which is just the extract and that kind of thing.
Because once it becomes something else, then that is the Ministry of Health.
All right. I'll check on IG. It says, I am James Boston, says he has a small business. I don't know if that's a ganja business. Well, good on you. Hopefully you're legal, you're meeting all the legal requirements, that the CLA doesn't have to come check on you. And if you are, call them, and I'm sure they'll be able to get you up to date, up to speed, and so that you're operating legally and like you're supposed to do. All right?
Well, if he has a small business like that, we'd expect that he's a licensee.
There you go.
If not, then you need to get a license.
You should.
If not, you might need to just get in touch with them so that make sure you're operating the right way so you can expand your business. It's not just about, just running that thing. If you want, you can build on it and make it into a viable industry, because that's the ultimate aim, isn't it?
Or for everybody out there, our application forms, they are available on our website. You can come in office and also get a physical copy, but they are on our website along with the requirements that you would need to be able to qualify for a license.
A whole checklist.
Can you give us an idea of what the cost is to come in and make the different applications? You have an idea what those cost?
For the application?
Right.
Well, the application fee for an individual, and individuals can apply for cultivator's license only. Other license types, you're required to register a company or a cooperative society. So for the individual, it's $300 and for the company, it's $500. Now, the fee, however, is only paid when we are satisfied that your application form has been completed satisfactorily. So
yeah, even then there are some checks and balances. You have to complete the thing first, send it to you guys.
Precisely.
You go over it and make sure that it's
Precisely.
We
actually
have
up
a
to
due
scratch.
diligence process.
Right. All right, so I mean, 300 seems like 300 between 300 and 500 US is a small,
for the application.
Right, for the application seems like a
fee.
small price to pay to get into the industry. As she said, over 800.
That is the application
US.
fee. We don't want to leave here
with
right, of course, yes.
We don't make any distinction that there's a license fee that is separate.
Oh, well done.
Right.
Clarified. And what is the license fee different?
So when you get to the stage where your license is now granted, meaning that we have said, okay, this person or this company is fit and proper to enter the industry, then you're now required to pay your license will be granted, and then you're required to pay your license fee and a security bond where it's applicable to be issued with a license.
What's that fee like, or does it vary?
It varies based on the type and tier of license. So for the tier 1 cultivator, that is $2,000 for the license fee.
Okay, and so which is why it's important. As you mentioned before, there are deferred. You can apply for a waiver of deferment, that kind of thing.
Waiver
right?
or
So
deferment
you can
of fees.
go through and then try and get yourself up and running, and then pay back for it over a period of time. I would imagine the objective there is simply to get persons into the industry and get it vibrant, get it robust, get it up and running, so that we can really have something that's comparable to the international counterparts that we have and doing really well. I guess the last question I have is just both of you should just share like long-term vision of where you see the sector going, where you see the industry going, and how CLA is going to fit into that.
Well, for the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, one of the things that the CLA is to do is to help with the economic development, and it will do this through the issuing of licenses. We believe that with the growth of the industry, as the industry grows rather, the authority has been growing itself, trying to meet the different demands. Right now we're issuing 5 license types. We're moving towards issuing a permit. We're going into export. We're going into hemp, right? We're doing a lot of things that will cause us to our scope to be widened, and I believe over the next few years we'll see a booming ganja industry, where persons are not only trading locally, but they're also exporting, and we're developing products, and where Jamaica is getting patents and businesses are opening. We definitely have strains. We're gonna be doing standards for the industry as well, so that will also propel us even further with all the different things that we can do for Jamaica. It's going to be a part of sustainable development for the country.
All right, let me just before I jump in, and there are some questions that we came in on our online. Candice Christine is asking what determines if a person or company is fit and proper to be granted a license. I guess what are some of the considerations that you have to give before a person is granted? And same question from Kirk Hosen, who's asked what makes a cultivator qualify for a license. So basically, I just want to know if they're in good standing to come and make an application and so on, and what would disqualify them before they, and so what would they have to work on to make sure that they're able to apply in the first place?
All right. Well, what they need to do, having submitted the application, of course, there are some requirements, your police record, your tax, we need to know your tax compliance and all those things. What the regulation asks for to qualify, so that a person qualifies to be fit and proper under the regulation, we have to think about whether they are of good repute in terms of their character, because you have to think about the business that they're doing. This is ganja, so we need persons of a certain character, honesty, and professional integrity. We need to know that they are equipped and really prepared to enter into the industry in the right way. One of the things is the substantial ownership, which we had mentioned earlier. So we need to know that they are stable as well, stable enough to start, because we don't want them coming in starting and can't
sustain it. Yeah.
Right, and of course their level of compliance in terms of with the law. Is it that they have been, if a history of compliance with the Act, I should say, just to specify with the Dangerous Drugs Act, because if you have been convicted of certain offences and you have a record and the time has not passed, a certain time has not passed, then that would disqualify you.
Okay.
And at that time, for some offences, 5 years, for others, 10.
All right, so that begs the question for me. For example, you've been convicted of possession of ganja. Should that disqualify you from applying for a ganja
remember,
license?
the decriminalization part of it, that the DDA, the amendments to the DDA allowed is that if you were convicted of having 2 ounces or less, you can now go and have that expunged. So you can speak to the Ministry of Justice.
I think you should say that again for persons who might not necessarily be aware of that.
So even though this is not within our remit, persons who you were convicted of having 2 ounces or less of ganja, you are able to have that expunged, speaking through the Ministry of Justice from your police record.
All right, so and that should jump over that hurdle, if that was a hurdle for you to try and get a license and get into the industry, whether as a cultivator, processor, or researcher, that kind of thing. All right, now Felicia, it's your turn. Tell me what you think about the industry. Where do you see it going over the next couple of years, and how does CLA fits into that process?
Ms. Graham said it so well, so what I will do, I'll just add to what she said. So we issued our first license in October 2017, so that's about 2 years ago. And since that time, through the licensees, I think about 427 jobs have been created. So what I see is for the industry to expand in such a way that there are so many more jobs being created through the industry. And as she mentioned, it's about sustainable development. So the industry and those in the industry are not the only ones benefiting, but there are also the other spin-off industries that are benefiting, whether it is security, whether it is persons dealing with disposal. So there are so many other directions and ways that the country can and will benefit from the industry. So what I envision is that those 259 conditional approval persons being able to move on to the next level, get their licenses issued and granted, and then we have an expansion of the industry where just about everyone will benefit, and it will be sustainable.
And one of the things that we're passionate about too is getting information out there, educating the public, right? The perception is negative in a lot of ways.
Indeed, that's true.
And it stems from illegal activity. But we want to get the message out there that ganja is a good thing. It's something worth protecting. And that is why we want persons to come into the legal regime, come into the medical space, because that is what is going to heal the nation, right? Our CEO has been saying it. It's about science. So we need to understand the plan that we have. We're sitting on our legal officer likes to say, we have a green print, right?
Exactly.
And we're sitting on a green mine.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
we want to change the perception, the negative perceptions out there about ganja and about the CLA too. And we want to educate persons about the plant itself, about what it means to have a sustainable industry. We cannot do it without compliance, and we need to educate persons. So we're on a thrust of education, letting people understand that it is something to be taken seriously. It is science. Let me tell you, I think people take the industry, people take ganja for granted.
They do.
right? Because we just feel so.
You can just pluck it from the earth and then sell it, and
It's right
that's as
outside.
simple as that. Right?
It's right outside in the backyard.
Yeah.
So we take it for granted, and I think we need to change that perception. And when they see the growth of the industry with businesses flourishing and export flourishing and all kinds of other spin-off activities taking place and opportunities, I think they will recognize that it is something that should be taken seriously, right? And that they should come into the license regime and do it right, so that they can build not only themselves but the country.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
Vaughn, I just want to say, as Ms. Graham mentioned, perception. Even the initial question, the first question he asked, I think that is a perception that it is only the big man that is in the industry.
Right.
Many persons don't know who are the persons in the industry. And because that's not necessarily something that someone will go out and advertise. But we don't know. So we have a perception that it's just the big man, but there's nothing that precludes anyone. It's for all Jamaicans.
All right, I know we had some questions on Instagram, so I just want to go back and make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's see. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving.
Right, thank
to
you,
those
even
of
though
us
we're in
who are
Jamaica.
Saying very informative. Kirk Hosen, appreciate that, Kirk. I hope you got the information that you needed. Ricardo Portius over on IG, appreciate that also, Ricardo. So, all right, but thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate the eyes, and I'm sure this discussion is going to have a lot of legs, and there are a lot of persons who are going to listen back to it and get all the information they need so that they can understand the industry, and that's what we're here for. No, a tech person said there's a comment from somebody else. Can you tell me what it is, because I'm not seeing it on my machine here. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a long one. From Steve, who's saying that they don't want hemp in Jamaica because that will cause cross-pollination and that might affect our industry. That is for large landscapes like in Guyana and so on. But you basically talked about that.
Yeah, I hope Steve got some of that information, because the reason we have the policy is with the absence of a policy,
it's more dangerous.
So
what we're doing is,
our policy ensures that there is a minimal risk of exposure for cross-pollination. For example, we're ensuring that we're only allowing feminized plants. We're not using craft hemp. We're also looking at ensuring that there is enough distance between where we're having ganja cultivation and hemp cultivation. So, Stephen, that's what his name. I hope your question was answered. And if you have any further questions, just reach out to the CLA.
Yeah.
We're here and we're willing to speak with you to give some clarity on your concern.
All right, on that score, you can follow up with the CLA on their website, which is cla.org.jm. They're also on Facebook. They're on Twitter. They're on social media. You just check them out. You'll find them. I think you might have the contact details or like numbers, telephone numbers and stuff.
Sure.
You can just share those real quick.
So our telephone number is 927-3657. And our email is info@cla.org.jm. There is another telephone number that I would want to give you if you would give me just a second.
Go ahead. See, there we go. All the ways possible you can reach out to them, get information that you need. It's not any secret, it's not any big secret, it's not something for just big man alone.
Secret.
Right? It's not something for the big man or the big manufacturers alone. Anybody who has an interest can come and get the information that they need and play an active part in this industry, because as I like to say, the rising tide lifts all ships. You want to have all levels of participants in the sector. That's how you have a vibrant and robust sector, not just when persons who are able to afford large acreages and so on. You need smaller persons who can create those special strains and those special types and those special conditions to grow optimally and create some new products and that kind of thing. That's where it really comes from. All right, so go ahead and share the number.
Right, so the other number is 876-654-7582, and I'll repeat the email address, info@cla.org.jm.
Right.
Our website is cla.org.jm. And for those with concerns, our website also has a section which is report a concern.
All right. So I'm going to thank my audience for being so kind to our guests today. Normally they pepper them with questions and they don't get to get out of here, get such an easy time. But for whatever reason, maybe it's because we're talking about ganja.
They appreciate the information. They appreciate the information.
They get them an easy ride today. No problem. I guess they'll reserve it for somebody else when they come around. Maybe they're just relaxed because we're talking about ganja. Who knows? I don't know. But you know what? Thank you very much for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. We saw things fluctuating. So we know there are a lot of persons jumping in on this conversation and trying to understand what's going on with our marijuana industry. I'm sure there are persons all around the world who want to know what's going on with weed in Jamaica,
Definitely.
ganja in Jamaica. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate those of you who lent us your eyes, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really do appreciate that. And if you have a question and we didn't get to answer it, or if there's a question you'd still like to ask, go ahead, leave it in the comments, leave it below our video. We'll be able to get in touch with our guests and channel the questions to them so you can get the information that you need. Now remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone you'd like for us to have in studio, let us know. And we'll try to have that person in studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're there, and you can find all the information that you need. You can go back, watch this video over so you can get the information on CLA and maybe get yourself involved in the industry. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day.